So this chapter begins with a question: how much evidence is enough? Right? And notice what they say here. They say that Bart Ehrman's beliefs make him skeptical toward the likelihood of the miraculous. Right? He's in that. Can miracles really happen? Right? Yet, in the light of his New Testament time bestseller, misquoting Jesus on, of all things, textual criticism, right, perhaps he should reconsider, right? Because who wants to read it? Why would hundreds of people want to read about, right, textual criticism?
Exactly,
right?
Exactly.
So at least they say that part of the reason for the attraction of misquoting Jesus is that Erdman explains how we actually got the Bible, that sits in our pews and on our shelves, right? So that's kind of an interesting thing that piqued folks' interest, apparently. Right?
Yeah, so we talked about this kind of fundamentalism that Ehrman has, but there are many fundamentalists who have this view that, God has kind of beamed his word into people, and that, it's 100% exactly in the American English, and
right,
we're translating it into the heathen languages, and so there's no
American Midwest English,
right of like 1980, pretty much, or 47, depending on which version of the 1611 that you have, so where that's where the translation process begins and ends, is that we have it in English. It's good enough. It was good enough for Daddy. It was good enough for me, and we're making sure that the Inuits and other people in the Papua New Guinea can read the English that we can. And
that's right.
And so, unfortunately, that's not at all what the history of. It's important to understand the history, and Bart Ehrman has popularized it and made people think, oh, there's more to the story. And so then within that scope, within that framework that you're providing them an accurate one, from there, it seems like you can play around a lot, because you're already getting people out of that mindset of like, oh yeah, how exactly did we get the Bible?
Yeah.
So there's has been an unfortunate lack of awareness by most basic facts about the Bible's transmission, i.e. the process by which the Bible has been preserved over centuries.
Right. So they call that transmission, right?
Right.
Yeah. How it's been preserved,
right,
from when it was written to what we have now. Right.
And so just as you can have this idea of it being beamed in people's heads, you can have just the other idea of fundamentalism, is that it's been copied a zillion and a half times. And so like the game of telephone, you can never really tell where you're coming from. Yeah. I'm surprised it even reads the way it does with it.
Smooth it is.
Right.
It even makes sense at all.
I mean, that's not usually how the game of telephone works.
Of course, some people would say it doesn't make sense, right? Who rises from the dead? Right? It doesn't make sense.
Right. How dare he? Likely part of the reason that people have not thought deeply or at all about how the Bible is transmitted is that we live well after the invention of the Gutenberg printing press. So when we think of like, well, we have a copy of it, well, you just put it in a Xerox machine, or you hit the print button from the internet. But it's more kind of along the lines of a better version of the Wikipedia.
That's right.
Not everyone can change it, but there's a process by which you can see people have copied from an original source, and if there are changes within it, it doesn't seem as dramatic as what one side of the extremes or the other has made it out to be.
Yeah. So obviously our Bibles haven't been Gutenberg copies
right,
like that, right?
Until much later.
That's right. In the ancient world, copies were made by hand, quite frankly, and if you wanted something copied, you'd hire a scribe. Right, but no matter how careful the scribe, occasional mistakes would happen. Mm-hmm. Also, to add to this fact, that scribes in the ancient world may have copied a manuscript by not just looking and writing down, but also by hearing it read.
Right. Yeah.
So rather than seeing it, and so sources of error could multiply because you didn't hear correctly or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So there's all kinds of opportunities for mistakes to be made when you're making these copies by hand.
Right. We're in a well-lit room. We have a lot of paper in front of us. We have unlimited amount of ink. You didn't really have that much done. If you didn't have candles after 5:58 p.m., then you pretty much had to put the pen and quill down and figure out where you were the next day.
Yeah.
It's not at all what we can do these days.